A royal invitation with a hidden agenda. Princess George targeted in a quiet scheme to reshape his future and erase his grandmother's legacy. But one sharp-eyed royal saw the trap. Princess Anne moved fast, risking palace backlash. What followed would shake Windsor and leave her in unexpected tears. The invitation that hid a trap. It arrived one rainy Tuesday morning, a gold-crested envelope, its heavy paper embossed with what looked like the official royal seal. To anyone glancing at it, the letters screamed formality, tradition, legitimacy. But the first red flag was obvious to Princess Anne. It had bypassed every palace channel. Inside was an elegantly worded letter, addressed directly to Prince George. It was from Camilla herself, personally inviting the young heir to an exclusive etiquette retreat at her private Ray Mill house. The language was warm, the offer wrapped in the kind of charm that could disarm even the most cautious parent. But to Anne, the charm rang hollow. She read and reread the letter. The words were polished, yes, but underneath, she saw the intent. This wasn't about teaching George good manners or giving him a unique experience. This was about reshaping his image, slowly pulling him away from the Diana legacy that still glowed so brightly in the public's heart. And the timing couldn't have been more precise or more suspicious. William and Catherine were both overseas on official royal duty, days away from returning. With his parents gone, George was, in Camilla's eyes, vulnerable. Anne spotted the letter by chance while reviewing the weekly youth activity reports, something she had quietly begun monitoring in 2023 to safeguard the heirs. She had always believed that the younger royals needed a watchful eye, someone who could see through polite phrasing and political flattery. She held the envelope in her hands longer than she intended, the edges crisp against her fingers. It was almost laughable how official it looked, almost, because beneath the gold crest and graceful signature, Anne could sense the real message. Let me shape him my way. It reminded her of similar offers in the past, invitations dressed as opportunities, all designed to place young royals under select influences. But George wasn't just any royal child. He was the future king. And whoever shaped his early worldview would inevitably shape the monarchy itself. That was the danger. Anne didn't slam the letter down or call for a public confrontation. She was far too seasoned for that. Instead, she placed it back into its envelope and slipped it into her personal briefcase. She knew she would need to tread carefully, because if Camilla had sent this without going through the proper channels, she likely wanted it hidden from William and Catherine for as long as possible. Her mind was already moving to the next step. Who else had seen this letter? Was it part of a larger plan? And most importantly, why now? She looked out of the palace window at the grey skies over London and murmured to herself, "If she thinks I'll let this slide, she's in for a shock." What Anne didn't yet know was that this was only the first step in a much longer game Camilla had been quietly playing for years. Camilla's history of playing the long game. If there was one thing Anne had learned over decades in the royal arena, it was this. Camilla never made a move without a long-term vision. For years, Camilla had found subtle ways to insert herself into decisions about the upbringing of royal children. Always wrapped in the language of tradition or royal grooming, her suggestions often appeared harmless, so even helpful. But behind the careful smiles, Anne saw the strategy. In 2022, Camilla had pushed for Princess Charlotte to attend a finishing school connected to her own aristocratic circle. On paper, it looked like a sophisticated opportunity. But to those who knew her style, it was about placing Charlotte under influences that aligned more with Camilla's social world than with the legacy of Princess Diana. That proposal had only been stopped after quiet but firm pushback from Catherine and Anne. Anne feared Camilla's approach, polish over authenticity, would slowly erode the values Diana had championed: warmth, openness, genuine connection with the public. The public adored those traits, and Anne knew losing them would be a mistake the monarchy could never recover from. There were also the whispers. Palace insiders spoke of Camilla, commenting that George was too much like his grandmother, a remark many saw as a thinly veiled criticism of Diana's influence. To Anne, that comment wasn't just an opinion, it was a signal of intent. The publication of Prince Harry's memoir had only sharpened Anne's vigilance. In it, Harry had painted Camilla as manipulative, a figure adept at using the press and palace politics to her advantage. Anne didn't need convincing. She had seen enough herself over the years to know when someone was maneuvering for influence. Since then, Anne had quietly doubled her watch over Camilla's contact with William and Catherine's children. She read reports, asked discreet questions, and kept her ear tuned for anything unusual. And now, here it was, the etiquette retreat. Another opportunity, dressed as a gift, designed to place a future king into the hands of people loyal not to his parents, but to Camilla. Anne closed her folder of past reports and sat back, her expression unreadable. The pattern was there, and this time she wasn't going to wait for William and Catherine to come home before acting. She had stopped Camilla once before. She would do it again. Because this wasn't just a matter of school trips or etiquette lessons. This was about who would shape the monarchy's next chapter. And Anne had no intention of letting Camilla hold the pen. Anne's quiet investigation. Anne knew she couldn't confront Camilla head-on. Not yet. In palace politics, charging in too soon only gave the other side time to spin the narrative. If this etiquette retreat was truly what she suspected, she needed facts. Solid, irrefutable facts. She called for her most trusted equerry, a man who had been by her side for years, discreet, loyal, and skilled at uncovering the truth without leaving a trace. Her instructions were simple, but the undertone was sharp. I want to know exactly what's waiting for George at Raymill House, and I want to know it yesterday. Over the next 48 hours, the equerry worked quietly, bypassing all official channels. What he uncovered confirmed Anne's worst fears. The retreat was not being run by neutral educators or recognized royal advisors. Instead, every single session leader was a personal friend of Camilla's, many of them from her pre-royal social circle, people with no formal role in the monarchy. The program outline was even more alarming. Planned speeches on the modern monarchy conspicuously left out any reference to Princess Diana or Queen Elizabeth II. There was no mention of Diana's values of compassion and public service, no acknowledgement of Elizabeth's decades of duty. Instead, the focus was on adaptability and presentation, a glossed, polished image of royal life that bore little resemblance to the authenticity the public still craved. Anne recognized the pattern instantly. It was the same tactic she'd seen attempted on Charlotte in 2022, and nearly on Harry and William years earlier. Slow, deliberate isolation from their roots, followed by a carefully constructed replacement narrative. She didn't hesitate. The moment the equerry handed her the full report, she bypassed Charles entirely. Going through the king would mean delays, debates, and possible reversals. Instead, Anne sent a direct order to the retreat organizers. The visit was cancelled, effective immediately. No explanation, no rescheduling. It was a bold move, one that would undoubtedly cause ripples. But to Anne, the priority was clear. George stays anchored. His education, his public image, his connection to his family's history would remain under the watch of those who understood its importance, not in the hands of those looking to rewrite it. As she signed the cancellation note, Anne felt a flicker of satisfaction. The trap had been spotted and dismantled before it could spring. But she also knew something else. Camilla wouldn't take this quietly. Camilla's endgame revealed. From the outside, Camilla's moves over the years could be seen as harmless, even generous. Hosting dinners, attending events with the young royals, offering to mentor them in the ways of the crown. But those who watched closely saw the deeper layers. Her real goal, royal insiders whispered, was nothing short of rewriting the monarchy's future through its heirs. By shaping George early, she could slowly reduce the Diana influence, that warmth, accessibility, and human touch the public adored, and replace it with something far more controlled, far more aligned with her own family's image. Camilla's ideal heir was polished, camera-ready, and capable of delivering speeches without a flicker of vulnerability. She preferred appearances where the children were posed and rehearsed, rather than naturally engaging as Diana had encouraged. To her, the people's princess approach was messy, unpredictable, and a threat to the monarchy's carefully managed image. Those close to her say she dreaded the idea of being remembered merely as a placeholder queen, a figure who briefly held the title before fading into history. She wanted a legacy, something lasting. And influencing the next generation was the surest way to achieve it. Anne had heard the warning signs for years. In private, she had told trusted allies, her game ends with Diana erased from the story. To many, it sounded dramatic. To Anne, it was simply the truth. The etiquette retreat was only the latest in a series of small, deliberate moves, each one designed to distance the Wales children from their late grandmother's principles. If successful, Camilla's influence would ripple for decades, shaping not just George's reign, but the entire tone of the monarchy's future. But with Anne now standing firmly in her way, the game had shifted. Camilla's strategy would have to adapt, and that made her next move all the more unpredictable. William's volcanic return. The engines of the RAF jet had barely cooled when Prince William stepped onto the tarmac, the late afternoon sky low and gray over London. He'd just returned from a high-profile diplomatic tour with Catherine, but the welcome home would be anything but warm. Anne's call had come hours earlier, her voice clipped, every word chosen carefully. "We need to talk. It's about George." Inside Kensington Palace, Anne wasted no time. She laid out the entire Camilla plan: the gold-crested invitation, the bypassing of palace channels, the Ray Mill house retreat run by her friends, and the deliberate omission of Diana and Elizabeth from the curriculum. She even handed over her equerries' report, every detail in black and white. The effect was instant. William's expression hardened, his jaw tight as stone. His voice was low, but it vibrated with anger. "She went around us, around the palace, around me." Without waiting for advisors, William strode straight into Clarence House, bypassing staff who tried to slow him down. He found Charles in his study, flipping through briefing papers. The confrontation was immediate. "Did you know?" William demanded. Charles looked up, startled. "Know what?" "That Camilla sent my son an invitation without our consent, that she planned to take him to Ray Mill to teach him her version of the monarchy." Charles's reply was calm, almost too calm. "I'm sure she meant well. You're overreacting." William's voice rose, sharp. "Overreacting? This is about the future king. This is about protecting him from manipulation. And you won't even tell her she was wrong? Charles leaned back, his eyes weary. A public rebuke would cause unnecessary scandal. We can't afford that. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. William's trust, already strained, cracked further. If his father wouldn't protect George from political games, he'd find someone who would. From that day, William began shifting more decision-making authority to Anne and Sophie, two royals he trusted implicitly. The new rule was unshakable. No unsupervised access to my children from anyone. For William, the fight was no longer about one invitation. It was about the boundaries that would define his children's lives from this moment on. And if those boundaries cut across the path of the Queen Consort, so be it. The night Anne broke down. Balmoral Castle, autumn. The corridors were quiet, the Scottish wind pressing against the ancient windows. In the drawing room, Princess Anne sat near the fire, her riding boots still on, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The day had been filled with formalities, estate meetings, family dinners, polite small talk. But as the night deepened, so did the weight she carried. Catherine found her there, the flicker of firelight catching the glint of moisture in Anne's eyes. It was a sight Catherine had never seen. Anne crying. Anne's voice was low, almost a whisper. I should have seen it sooner. I should have stopped it before it even reached him. Catherine moved closer. You did stop it. George is safe. But Anne shook her head. Safe this time, but the way they circle, like vultures. They'll try again. Diana would have burned this place down for less. For the long-serving staff nearby, it was the first time they had ever seen Anne's stoic facade crack. Her tears were not from weakness, but from fury. Fury that the same games she had witnessed in the 1980s and 1990s were now circling the next generation. She spoke of Diana that night, not as the icon the world remembered, but as a young mother fighting alone against forces too entrenched to budge. She knew what they were capable of, Anne said. And now I do too. The moment passed quickly. Anne wiped her eyes, straightened her posture, and was once again the steel spine of Windsor. But Catherine would never forget the glimpse of the woman beneath the armor, the aunt who would fight with every ounce of strength to keep her nephew free from palace manipulation. And somewhere deep inside, Anne made herself a promise. This battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. Catherine's silent counteroffensive. While William dealt with the political fallout behind closed doors, Catherine was quietly building her own line of defense, one that would close every door Camilla might try to open again. She didn't announce it, didn't hold meetings in public. Her moves were made through private calls and quiet gatherings in the palace's lesser-used rooms. The first call went to senior royal advisors, people who had served both Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, individuals who understood loyalty, protocol, and discretion. Her message was clear. Access to George, Charlotte, and Louis would now be tightly controlled. Every meeting, every event, every opportunity offered to them would pass through her or William first. No exceptions, not even for the Queen Consort. The next call was to the Archbishop of Canterbury. It wasn't about religion, not directly, but about influence. The Archbishop, as a respected moral authority, had long been an ally in supporting the moral and personal development of royal children. Catherine made sure he understood her position. The Wales children would be raised with Elizabeth's duty and Diana's heart, not molded into something else. Then came her most strategic move. She quietly launched a private mentorship program for George, pairing him with a select group of people who embodied the values she wanted him to carry forward. Former ladies-in-waiting to the late Queen offered stories of discipline and service. Friends of Diana spoke about compassion, authenticity, and connection to the people. Every session reinforced the two legacies Catherine knew mattered most: the unshakable commitment of Elizabeth and the warmth of Diana. Together, they formed a blueprint for the kind of king George could one day be, and a shield against those who might try to rewrite that blueprint. Word began to spread in court circles. Those who supported Catherine saw her as a lioness, guarding her cubs not with public declarations, but with strategic, precise action. Those less fond of her saw her as calculating. And they weren't wrong. She was calculating, but in service of one thing only: her children's future. When the press got wind of her growing influence over decisions about the heirs, they dubbed her the Lioness Queen-in-Waiting. For Catherine, the title was irrelevant. What mattered was that every move Camilla might try in the future would now hit a wall built by a mother who understood exactly how the palace game was played. Camilla gets frozen out. The shift was subtle at first, just a few changes to guest lists and seating arrangements. But within weeks, the pattern was unmistakable. Camilla was being quietly frozen out. Child-focused royal events that she once attended were suddenly hosted by Anne or Catherine. Invitations to private holiday gatherings with the Wales children missing. Even planning documents for Christmas at Sandringham showed Anne and Catherine in key roles, while Camilla's name was conspicuously absent. At public services, the tension was almost visible. Cameras captured brief, curt interactions between Camilla and Charles, the kind where the smiles are polite, but the eyes are distant. In response, Camilla's PR team scrambled. Friendly magazine profiles appeared, painting her as a devoted grandmother figure and a warm, guiding presence for the next generation. But the damage was done. Public perception had shifted, and the warmth those articles tried to project rang hollow against the backdrop of recent events. Royal experts began openly discussing the change. Anne's intervention has cut Camilla's influence over the heirs to its lowest point yet, one commentator said on live television. Others noted that Charles seemed unable or unwilling to reverse the shift. Privately, Camilla's allies complained about being shut out of decisions, but the palace machine moved on without them. The axis of influence had shifted decisively toward Anne and Catherine, and they weren't about to give it back. For Camilla, the freeze-out wasn't just about losing access to the Wales children. It was about symbolism, the quiet but unmistakable message that she could be sidelined if she pushed too far. And for Anne and Catherine, it was proof that united, they could protect the heirs, not just from one scheme, but from any that might come next. Public uproar and Anne's hero status. What began as a whisper became a storm. The moment the story broke, social media erupted. Anne protected George, Diana, would be proud, and Shield. Of Windsor dominated timelines. Clips of Princess Anne stepping between cameras and Prince George resurfaced, edited into montages with captions like, "The last line of defense." Royal reporters praised her as the monarchy's moral compass and steel spine. A petition quickly gathered signatures urging her appointment as guardian of the heirs. Late-night TV crowned her the one who keeps the monarchy steady by holding the brakes. Meanwhile, Camilla faced the opposite tide. Her warm grandmother profiles were met with quotes from the Ray Milhouse invitation and criticism that this wasn't modernization, It was erasure. William stayed measured. Our children's well-being comes first. Catherine let actions speak. School runs, youth programs, and George always flanked by herself or Anne. A candlelit vigil outside Kensington Palace carried handwritten signs. Duty with heart. For Diana, for George. Thank you, Anne. The Windsor Pact is born. Behind closed doors, Anne, William, and Catherine formed the Windsor Pact. 4 pillars: protection before optics, legacy preserved, structure over spectacle, and accountability in. George's public outings would always pair him with Anne or Catherine. Mentorship blended Elizabeth's duty and Diana's heart. Access to the heirs? Fully gated, with all offers passing through the triad. Implementation was swift. Guest lists rerouted to Anne's office. Child-focused events? Under Anne and Catherine's control. Camilla's access faded, not with drama, but with silence. The public sensed the shift. The heirs now walked under the shield and heart of 2 women determined to hold the line. Anne's words lingered. Guard the line. The retreat was stopped, the pact sealed, and George's future pulled back from palace politics. Princess Anne's tears weren't defeat. They were relief and resolve. The monarchy's shield had held firm. Camilla's plan had failed, but in the quiet halls of Windsor, Anne knew the next battle was coming.